I was considering not even covering this show anymore after last week's garbage episode. I did get a lot of feedback though on last week's video, both positive and negative. Just an FYI for anybody watching this right now. This is my channel, so I figured it was pretty obvious that it's my opinion. But some people got butthurt because I trashed Power last week. But quite frankly, I don't give a shit. If you want to have a convo with me in the comments about the episode, I'm here for that. Absolutely, I'm down to have a conversation with anyone. But don't come at me like a hypocrite just because you're mad because you didn't agree with what I said. Because honestly, I just don't have time for that shit. But I digress. So as for episode 2 of Power Book 2, this episode wasn't quite as egregious as the first episode was, but I still think this show has some serious problems right now, which I'll get into as I go on. As I stated last week, there's something off about this show right now, and the characters just aren't believable to me, nor are the situations that they're put in. That being said, this was brought to my attention last week, and I kind of agree with it, so I'm going to reiterate it now. As far as Method Man's character goes, I love Method Man as an MC, but his acting does leave something to be desired, to be quite honest. I could say the same for Mary J, although it's not quite as bad. But in this episode, Method Man's character is trying to figure out what Sax has against Tasha. Like, what would make him go to such lengths to try to pin Ghost's crimes on her. This is where he asks Tariq to basically trash his father in the eulogy to try to make his mother look better. I immediately rolled my eyes because it just seemed like something Tariq would do up to this point. In Tariq's defense, he did seem apprehensive about doing that, so that's one positive thing I could say about him. So they start setting up in this episode that Tariq doesn't have the whole story about his father. Simon Stern tells him stuff, Ghost's uncle tells him stuff, so you see Tariq kind of starting to feel a little bit of regret maybe, perhaps? Method Man is trying to prove that Sax has an agenda against Tasha, and that Sax is manipulating shit to try to frame her for Ghost crimes. Sax is looking for help in his investigation, but obviously not a lot of people want to work with him because of his track record and because he is kind of viewed as being crooked or dirty. I spoke last week about some woke or agenda related ideas kind of infiltrating power. It came to me during that random identity politics conversation at the Sax family dinner table last week. This week wasn't quite as obvious, but I did feel certain things were a little bit forced or out of place. I'm going to be delicate about how I talk about this because it is a sensitive subject, I know. Bottom line is this show has never really covered those ideas before. So now that they are during these tough times in real life, I feel like it's coming off a bit phony. When it comes at a time that feels out of place and like you're just trying to force an idea onto people, that's when you start to lose me, and that's when I take notice to these things, because maybe it's because it's so common in today's entertainment that now I'm looking for it, and perhaps I'm oversensitive to it. It takes me right out of the story, to be quite honest. And if you don't know what I'm talking about the initial classroom discussion that they're having when Tariq walks in, and as well as the conversation that his two teachers have with each other. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Tariq is having dinner at Mary J's house, and Uncle Frank stops by, and he's fresh out of jail, and people are kind of wondering how exactly. And somehow, of course, Tariq is the first person to come to the conclusion that he's probably a snitch, and he's going to be ratting on them. Again, I don't see this. Tariq has to be built up as being smart before I can see him as smart, and this isn't even book smart. This is more street smarts, I guess you could say. This is just being able to identify certain things or certain characteristics in people and being a good judge of character and seeing when someone is moving in a way that's shady. And this show just hasn't done enough to show me that Tariq would be able to do that. Mary J does figure it out in the very next scene, but still, it's kind of just unbelievable from Tariq's perspective. So then we come to Ghost's funeral, and Tariq is basically let off the hook, and he doesn't really have to bash his father in his eulogy, because Method Man has made advances in Tasha's case, so it's not necessary. One moment that I found interesting was when Tariq said to Ghost's uncle how he doesn't look like his father at all, meaning Tariq doesn't look like Ghost. I immediately went back to the original idea I had for many seasons actually, that Tariq is not actually Ghost's biological son. I believe Tasha had an affair at some point, probably with Kanan, just throwing it out there, and Tariq is a product of that. Just a theory of mine, and I'm sure other people share that theory as well, but I did find it interesting that they put that little tidbit in there to kind of plant that seed again. So Tariq does the eulogy, and he talks about the lessons that he learned about how his father lived his life and how he's starting to realize that he didn't really know his father as well as he thought he did. Again, showing some remorse. And again, I'm going to reiterate, this would have worked so much better had they been setting it up for a while. Had they spread this idea through a few episodes and shown Tariq being conflicted about what he did it would have had a better impact, I think, in this moment. Because as it stands right now, it just comes out of left field that he's suddenly having a change of heart. I don't know, again, it's just another aspect of the show that is just not believable to me. Like, they're not doing enough to set up these ideas that they have. He did also mention that all Ghost ever wanted was a better life for him, and that's something that I mentioned last week, and a big reason why I find Tariq to be annoying is that he's ungrateful, because his dad did try to do a lot of things to set him up for success in life, and Tariq is still acting like a spoiled little brat. It just makes it very hard to get behind a character like Tariq. So by the end of this episode, Tasha's motion for dismissal is denied. Mary J's son kills Uncle Frank in a bar that looks very reminiscent of the bar from Goodfellas too. I wanted to point that out as well. Tasha gets a cell phone in prison to talk to Tariq. Tariq has this master plan about how he's going to get out of this life, or get them all out of this life. And Mary J asks the cop she's banging to basically get her information on Tariq. And that's pretty much how the show ended. Overall, I felt like this episode was better than last week. It was an improvement, but it's still not very good. I just don't find the story that they're trying to tell compelling or believable. I feel like this show is desperately missing the presence of Ghost, Tommy, and Kanan. Like, those three characters were so polarizing and so interesting, and just the dynamic they had with each other. They don't really have that in Power Book 2, and there's not really characters that you can get behind or root against even. Like me, myself, I find myself rooting against the main character, the person I'm supposed to be rooting for, just because I don't like him as a character. Like, that makes it hard to enjoy a show. But did you see episode 2 of Power? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you next week right here for episode 3 review of Power Book 2. Thanks for watching, and peace out.